Ready to BNI Talks. My name is Steve Tenuzzo, your host. And today I have Claudia Thompson. She has done pretty much everything. It's a long list of BNI credits that she's got, but currently she is the Senior Launch Director. Is that right? Senior Launch Director for the Northeast?
Coach, you can call, you can, it's,
Coach,
there's been remixes
yes.
to it. It's been fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but what I love about Claudia is not only is she heavily involved in BNI, she's also the head of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion panel, but she's a member still. She never gave up her membership. And I think that is an amazing, amazing thing to see. I see someone from one of her launch chapters.
Marietta, hey.
So, Claudia, the one thing that I know about you is that you know how to bring people to a meeting. I don't know how you do it. I remember us launching a chapter and you were making phone calls and people were like, yep, gonna be there. So as we get into this time where we're gonna be working on building our chapters and filling out our contact spheres, this is a great time for us to really ask questions. So everyone here on this call, we have a lot of people on today, please take notes as we're going along. Claudia's going to reveal her tips, best ideas for not just inviting, but how you get them in the room, right? I think that's the big thing. So why don't we start with Claudia, just give us a little bit of background on yourself and how long you've been in BNI, because it's been a good long run for you.
It's been my whole life, 19 years, and I'm 21. But I've been in BNI for 19 years. I actually started out in sales. So I'm a native New Yorker. I always have to say this because every time I tell people I'm from Boston, they assume I like the Red Sox, and I don't want anyone to get misconstrued of where my allegiance is. But I am a native New Yorker, but I lived in Connecticut actually when I was introduced to BNI. And that's where I went to college. I was married at the time, and my son was really young. And I was introduced to BNI about, in order to find a way like to network. It was one of the things I did. I did all these networking things. Yes, thank you. Except I'm not a Knicks fan, but we can talk about it. But I appreciate the Yankees and Giants. So, so I had decided this was a really smart way of networking. Right at the end of the day, I do so many talks on networking. It was a smart way to network. I was much younger and pretty green when it came to business, right? Business in general. But I always knew how to connect with people, even when I was in high school and college. And so I've been BNI, and then not until you, sir, launched a newer chapter that I was a part of. I was in a previous chapter. I put my sales rep in that group and many other groups, then decided to jump back into BNI, and you were like the one launching us. And so I jumped in, and I was so excited to do it. And I think I sponsored 7 people at that time. And I'll talk about some of the ways that I did that, but it was kind of like, and for those of you that know, like a lot of times we launch a chapter with what we call the firm or the coveted seats, like a real estate agent, a mortgage broker, financial advisor, because they cannot get into any other chapter. I was in document solutions. I was like in tech. I could have gone to any chapter I wanted, but there was something about connecting. Hey, Lisa. There was something about connecting with a new group and creating something that was exciting, something that wasn't from before, right? So that's my passion in launch. Of course, then Steve said, you got to do this thing full time or, part-time. I think that you'd be great at launching chapters. And so I took my passion of BNI and connecting with people and started launching, and then became also an area director in that time, and then became what I am now, which was formerly managing launch director and now senior launch coach, which is I run a team of other folks who launch chapters. So I kind of duplicated myself, and we have a phenomenal team up in the Northeast, and we launch chapters all throughout New England. But I've also helped the team launch some chapters in Philly and things like that. And then I also do like a lot of the national trainings for a launch. So so that's pretty much my BNI experience in a nutshell.
I take full credit for discovering the great talent. So that's great.
I gave it to you.
Yeah, really. Who knew it would come from that conversation, but that's great. And I will tell you, launching chapters and inviting to a chapter that is not established is far more difficult than inviting to a group that exists, because when you're when you're saying to someone, hey, we're going to do this thing, it doesn't really exist yet, but that's our plan, it's much harder to get people there, but you still seem to be able to do that. So why don't we talk about a little bit about your approach when you're meeting people who you're trying to, let's say we have a lot of people here today that want to fill their contact spheres, right? So let's say you're inviting to your own chapter and you want to fill a certain seat. What's your approach for inviting?
This is a good question. So we were looking for a photographer in my chapter years ago. And my chapter is a showcase chapter. If you don't know what that is, that's lots of people. We have lots of visitors. We have high revenue, all of those things. We do everything as design. So in Boston. And so our chapter is pretty premier. And it wasn't like we couldn't find any random person. So we wanted to pick the right person, right? So I think initially, I just put it out on social media. And I didn't only use my own platform, but I was in the community pages. So for specifically this particular seat, I had posted, I reached out to people I knew, of course, and talked to some other folks, but I just put it out there. And there's a group in Massachusetts of women, it's business women, and we're up to 34,000 women in that group right now. And so that's a lot of women, but even at the time, it was probably 20, 25,000. And so I had 235 responses. I didn't say I'm in BNI. I didn't say I'm in a networking group. I think I said something as simple as, I'm looking for a photographer, a corporate photographer, both professional and personal reasons. It was something really simple, right? And I kind of put an image so that way the algorithms, like if people wouldn't kind of scroll over. 235 people. So I knew my person was in there. And I think 3 weeks later, we ended up getting the right one. We had several people interested. And it was funny too, because she was, and now she's busy again, right? So she had moved on and then we had another one. But at that time, like she lived far away. She had young kids, all the objections that we see and assume about people. She just kind of like skipped over all that. She's like, yeah, like by the time she left our meeting, this is back when we were meeting in person. And by the time she left our meeting, like in my inbox was like the notification that she had submitted an application. Like it was, so, you know, we knew of each other, but we were not connected. And so she ended up being the one, and you know, she ended up doing several people's weddings in the group and got amazing connections that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And by the way, you brought up something that I think is worth talking about, is that sometimes we think, boy, wouldn't this person be great? But they're so busy. I'm not even going to bother asking them. Right. You know, so how do you kind of get past that, you know, kind of prejudging people before actually reaching out to them?
I know this because, so if people looked at me, right, especially I was young, right? So a lot of times we make assumptions about young people, that they're not experienced enough, that they're not serious enough. But I was always driven. I was the same driven workaholic calling in from the Dominican Republic as I was back when I was in my 20s, right? And so I was also going through a divorce. So I was a single mother. There was all of these things that someone could have said, she's not gonna have the time, or she's not gonna be able to commit. And so when I keep that in mind, I just ask everyone, and I look at this as an opportunity to be a part of something. This is not about, you know, this is just not about trying to get somebody to do something. And I think if you try, it feels a lot harder. It feels like more of a hassle. And also when you have these, prejudgments of people, that gets in the way of you actually asking them straight. So a lot of times people be sort of passive about it, or not really being upfront, which then makes it feel like it's sleazy. And I think if we are all excited about BNI, why wouldn't I talk about it? Like, it's weird. How come I'm in it and I love it, but I'm going to be weird about talking about it? So I just bring up the opportunity to everybody. It's not just about, one person. And then you'd be surprised. Like you're just surprised about who ends up, wanting to be excited about it. And sometimes, funny enough, the people that you assume would be all over this are the ones that ghost you, that don't talk to you, or just like, it's not for me. And you're like, what? I don't understand. You're super outgoing. You're in sales. So you really have to present this to anybody and everybody that you're encountering with, that you're engaging with.
I think a lot of people, actually, before I ask that question, let's, Matt, is a newer member, and he writes, is getting connections to come to an existing chapter hard because folks can feel like an outsider, not sure if the environment is inclusive, as opposed to new where everyone starts on the same footing?
Yes. Thanks for that question, Matt. It's interesting. It's not about, so new or old. I mean, I can get into the new benefits all day because that's my jam. That's my wheelhouse. But it also, I invite lots of people to my existing chapter, and it really is up to the visitor hosts. Everyone should be really super welcoming and engaging, right? That's my sort of my diversity, equity, and inclusion hat as well. You have to be inclusive. People have to feel a sense of belonging. And if it feels cliquey, you have to be really careful with the inside jokes and the clickiness and like, oh, well, this person is not even in my contact sphere. I shouldn't even have to bother talking to them. If you are doing that, it's going to alienate some people that could potentially be your golden goose. So I think it is important that everybody, if you yourself have a visitor and you want to really set them up for success, try to connect them with people that they might be potential referral partners with in advance. So now they have 2 or 3 people that will kind of feel warmed up to them and they won't feel as nervous. Some people, they can go in blind, no problem, right? But some people, to set them up, they have more of a shot of attending and even putting in an application if they've already been connected to several other people in the group. And I feel like my chapter does that very, very well. And I've seen some people do that as well.
So they reach out in advance and all that stuff.
They reach out in advance. They'll say, hey, I have Steve coming. He's, I think you two would be a good fit, right? I think actually you have, similar backgrounds, and this could potentially, Steve is going to be coming today, or, this coming week to our meeting. But I wanted to introduce you both first. And I think that that's super important. Also, what I've seen, in addition, the president or vice president, somebody's sending out a message, welcoming them in advance again, like really setting people up so that they can feel comfortable. So I think that's key, especially if you're in one of these, like I'm from a major city, I live in another major city. If you have that mentality too, and you're not from the area, you can, it's kind of, sort of intimidating. And so it's nice to be like, wow, this was really cool.
Yeah, I think, sometimes people say begin with the end in mind, but in this case, that might be a mistake. We joke about saying, well, what are you doing every Friday morning at 7 a.m. forever, right? It's too much, for someone who doesn't even know what BNI is. So I think the point that you made about inviting to a networking event to meet somebody is so much easier to do than saying, we've got this thing that we want you to be a part of.
Yeah. Because also, even for those that are in person or have hybrid, but even without that, if it's somebody that you're going to connect with them to definitely do business or have done business before, Sadiq, I saw he just put in there, he's the president of my own chapter. That happens a lot. After someone comes, they're like, oh, I know this one and this one and this one. And it's like, well, how come all those other people didn't think to invite them to the meeting?
Yeah.
Right. And then they're like, wow, I didn't know half the people I've been getting connected to were all from the same place, because this person introduced me this one, and then this one introduced me to this other one, but everyone is here. That's a great way, right? It's like now all these people that you've trusted and felt comfortable with can come and do that, right? So that was, so that's a great way. But that connection in advance, I think, is really helpful. And that's what we used to do. We used to say, come meet somebody. Hey, you want to know? Come to my meeting. Yeah.
Right. So, all right. So Charles is like, okay, how do you get the visitors? So
I pay them.
Yeah. What is the process of, let's say in my contact sphere, if I add an electrician, it's going to change the way I get referrals, and it's really going to make the contact sphere move. How do I target? How do I reach out? What do I say?
Completely from scratch. You know that an electrician would make a difference. So there are several different ways, right? Obviously, you can go. I think social media is the best way to cast the widest net. It's free. You can reach out to your network and say, who knows a plumber, right? And you all have seen this on Facebook or LinkedIn, and everyone gets excited. They tag someone. Another great place is Nextdoor, in particular, right? The Nextdoor is a neighborhood-based app. So in the community, a lot of times people are introducing themselves either personally or for their businesses. Hi, I'm a personal chef. I'm, I have a new dry cleaners or whatever it is, right? So people introduce themselves and you can be on the lookout for those. But if you are requesting, people usually like, oh, they don't think about it. A lot of times, again, it's not misleading. You are looking to connect with a plumber, right? Worst case, they don't join, but now you have an extra connection, right?
Yeah.
So that's one way, right? Is posting it out and letting people know. But now if we go a little deeper, right? That's like through your connections and then second level connections. But then there is an unlimited amount of people out there that you don't know, right? In the world of billions of people, the people that we actually are connected to is very tiny. And so there's so many people in your area that you have no idea who they are. So you can, with trades folks, since you brought up trades, of course, looking at any, vans, if you see a van safely when you're driving, making sure that you're making note of it and calling them. And that was a tactic I used for sales for years, right?
Yeah.
And of course, anybody that you see advertising already, right? So maybe you're at the coffee shop. One of my launch directors posted a picture, went right into a place and there was like business cards. So he just took a picture of all the cards, right? That's another thing that you can do. But people who pay something, they're clearly looking to expand their network and increase their visibility.
Right.
So people that already are doing that, you shouldn't be shy. That's a good way as well. I also like the reverse cold call, right? The people who call on you. So a lot of times I'm getting overwhelmed since the beginning of the pandemic. I've gotten an overwhelming amount of people finding me through LinkedIn in particular. They see the company I work for and then they're like, hey, we can help you get new windows. And I'm like, I don't buy BNI's windows or whatever, right? But I just say, but automatically, if they're local to me, and I know that we're launching a chapter, I'll reverse, or if they can potentially be a member in my chapter, I will ask them. I will say, are you local? Or, hey, I would actually like to get and chat with you, right? They're sending these out, by the dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of emails and LinkedIn messages. So when someone actually responds back, they are excited. They started it. They started the lines of communication.
Right.
So those are just some ways that you can connect with, and people. And I've had members join from that. I did not know most of the people I've sponsored, and I don't know how many I'm up to, Steve. But most of the people, it's a lot. But most of the people I've sponsored, I didn't actually have a close relationship with, which is interesting. And it's all from like, if I see someone, like I said, I'm constantly browsing. If I see in Nextdoor, or if I see on the community page on Facebook that someone is posting something, I'm like, oh, they introduce themselves. Instantly, I know they're looking for more connections.
Yeah.
And then I ask to like set up a Zoom or something with them. Yeah.
I think that one thing that you mentioned that you do all the time with that other people may not, and sometimes I have to remind myself of this, is when I'm meeting new people, do I think, is this a person who could be a good fit in my network? And if so, to do, because I don't know that we're necessarily inviting enough. I think there are a lot of missed opportunities where we could have just said, hey, I've got someone who would be a good connection for you, and I'd love you to meet them, especially for an online meeting. That's super simple, right? Here's a link, meet this person.
Very simple.
Right. Maybe a little trickier with an in-person meeting, depending on where your COVID rules are these days. But still, at the same time, I think that people are willing to meet one way or another, even if. And I think we had Larry Mazzone on a couple of weeks ago, and he was great. And one of the things he talked about was he doesn't invite to have people join the chapter. He invites people to see what's happening and to meet people. And if that's the case, great. And if they want to join the chapter, that's great. If they want to apply, I should say, to the chapter, they can. If they don't, that's okay too. But I think a steady influx of members coming into your chapter is always going to be better than the kind of chapters get a little stale when visitors don't come in.
Yeah, because then you start to get complacent, right?
Yeah.
And then you go through the motions. You might skip parts of the agenda, and each part of the agenda is key, right? Yeah. When we're training brand new chapters, we're telling them, look, don't ever skip any part of this, because the meetings are actually for for the visitors, right? For everybody, and even new members, right? You're training people. If you come in and you're kind of phoning it in, there's like that lack of excitement. So there's something where if new people are coming in, you will have to be on your game. And if you have a culture of inviting and new people coming in, it's super important. And Larry's 100% right. It's even just for them to look, because remember, this is not where you just pay money and you apply and you're in.
Mhm.
You don't just fill out a form. This is not the chamber, right? Nothing wrong with the chamber. I belong to many networking organizations outside of BNI, and BNI is an application process. And if you could treat this as something that is something that they have to vie for and compete, right? Like, look, I'm not even promising you that you can get into this thing, right? And I think if people have that mindset, they will feel more open to saying, look, you can come and check this out. But even deeper than that, each person that walks in the room is a connection. You know, the visitors account for 15 to 20% of the revenue. So I think it is important to remember that there is an opportunity for people to still get connected and still make money with a new person coming in every time. And of course, the energy and its excitement that it brings. So if you don't think of it as it's like, I'm trying to get this person to join, if you can kind of detach yourself from that and bring in someone from a different context, it actually is easier to invite people.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that, you know, is a matter of practice. People who I know who invite all the time just do it out of habit. Whereas I feel like a lot of people feel a lot of pressure when it comes time to invite, when the chapter asks, all right, let's build up our chapter and make some more money. It's like, oh, this feels like hard work, but it really is just you doing your own business, right? You're marketing your business in this way. But if you're not practiced at it, it does feel like something new every time.
Exactly. And it's also, but it's the same skill set as giving referrals, right? Your brain, now you're a member of BNI and you start training yourself to try to listen for anybody in your group that you can kind of refer, like any way I can introduce, whether you're in a client meeting, you're with family, you're at a cookout, it doesn't matter, right? That if you are doing the things you're supposed to do, you're always looking for ways that you can introduce people. I think it's important, again, the same skill set is a way to invite people. Let me make this connection, because essentially that's going to bring multiple referrals and business for the group if you're introducing people into the chapter. So again, think of it from that perspective of bringing people in, as opposed to having people just sort of just coming to try to join the group, because your membership committee at the end is ultimately going to make that decision.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Okay, so what do you do when you've been, I get this a lot. I've been in BNI for a long time and I've invited everybody already.
Well, we know that that's not true. It's not. I still haven't invited everybody, right? Like so I know that that's not true.
Yeah.
I've tried. And it's so funny. Every now and then I'll get someone and they're like, why haven't you invited me? Like, tell me about BNI. Like right now I'm with my friends and they're telling me, they're like, tell me about BNI. So what is it? Should I consider doing it? I'm like, I never thought to ask you that, right? Because I still kind of go back into it. So I think really ask yourself, and it's okay, right? Like no judgment that you haven't talked to everybody, but don't kid yourself into thinking that you've actually asked everyone that you know, right? There's people that you haven't. Now, you obviously don't want to ask people if you think that they are unethical in business practice, if they are jerks. Like, of course, we don't want those people, right? They don't embody our core values. So we wouldn't want to put those people in. And again, if for those that don't know, that BNI was founded by an introvert, right? And I think that this is a biggest misconception. A lot of times people that are more soft-spoken or don't seem as entrepreneurial, we don't really engage them in this conversation. And so we're like, no, they are this way. So I'm not gonna even ask them. And oftentimes you surprise yourself, or they bring it to you. Hey, I saw this thing that you did. What is that? Right. And I'm like, oh goodness, like slap myself on the wrist. I did not even think to ask you. So like kind of what my point was before. So ask everyone, right? Engage everyone in this conversation, because ultimately I love seeing people that I've connected, through BNI. I love that. I love that. And then eventually they start collaborating and doing business together, and everyone's network is expanded as a result. So you're doing people, giving them a massive opportunity when you're reaching out and talking to them about this. So yeah, so think about everyone that you've actually talked to.
Carrie brings up a good point when she says, invite them again, because sometimes BNI is not right for you in the moment in your life. Someone might have just had a baby or got married or just moved into town, all those things where they weren't ready, but it doesn't mean that 6 months down the line, it may be the perfect opportunity for them.
You just never know. Someone could be going through a really tough time, right? And we've seen that over the last 2 years in particular. People have been more open about the times that they're going through, but all throughout, right? I mean, I've been divorced, there's been recessions, there's been hurricanes, there's been all kinds of things that have happened in 19 years. There's a lot, right? And sometimes people can handle it no problem. And sometimes people go through the ups and downs. So whatever might be going on for someone, or maybe they don't feel financially secure, or maybe they're going to pivot their business, they're unsure of what they're going to do. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, right? And so unless someone says they're a hard no, never, do not ever bring this to me, do not push it, right? You want to just take their no as a no. If they come back to you, that's fine, right? But if they say, a maybe, like if they're a yes, but for whatever reason, if you don't feel comfortable tackling the objection in the moment, ask them if it's okay if you bring it up with them again in the future.
Right.
Is this okay? Like basically leaving the door open for that opportunity. But you never know. And then sometimes people do end up joining. I know a guy for years was trying to join, and finally he ended up joining a group in Boston, and he's loving it, right? He's on membership now. He thanks me every day for being patient with him. I've been telling him, like, this is going to make a difference in your business, and he's absolutely loving it. So yeah.
All right. So Mark is asking about networking events, and that's something a little thing about. Are they a good way to mine prospects? If you're at one group, is it okay to invite to another?
Well, I was discovered, like I'm a singer, but I was discovered at a chamber event back years ago. That's how. So I would say yes, because most of those other networking groups, Rotary Club, Toastmasters, chambers, young business professionals, they allow for more than one person per profession. So you often are with 20 other realtors, 20 other insurance folks, right? So like they'll let anybody in, and those are still great to meet the masses, right? Because a lot of times your referrals and potential visitors can come from those places, right? You need to continuously be adding. And how I was just discovered, how I discovered BNI was someone that I had seen at a couple of events, because the top rep at the time in my company happened to be in my office in Connecticut. And I was like, what are you doing? And she was like, I just network. I do everything. I network with this group, I network with that group. But she wasn't even in BNI, but she was in every chamber in all of her territories, all of this stuff, right? And so I had done the same. I'm like, I'm just going to go to a bunch of events. I would pay for childcare, like extended childcare after work, just to try to do that. And so while I had nice drinks and I met nice people, I wasn't getting like a big return on my investment as quick as possible. And so someone I had seen a couple of times. The next day was his BNI meeting in the morning at 6:45 a.m. And he said, can I please, he's like, I've seen you a couple of times. Would you be interested in something where there's only one person per profession? That had me hooked. And it was early in the morning. Everyone that knows me, I get up at like 4 a.m. So I was like, this is great. I could drop my son off at daycare. I can go to this, like everything worked out, right? The stars aligned. And that's where I went, because that's what he said to me. This is the difference of this. It's not better or worse. I'm not telling you to quit the chamber. But if you feel like you haven't had success and really deep connections, you can come meet some great people. And he also mentioned some people that I could meet. So that was another thing. Yeah. So I would say absolutely. If you have these connections and you're part of your Rotary, Toastmasters, all of these other networking organizations, 1,000% talk to them about BNI. Yeah.
Yeah. This came up in last week's panel, and someone had mentioned having a relationship with the chamber. So if you're an ambassador in a chamber, to invite the chamber to your chapter. And a lot of people don't think about that, but this, by the way, you can still invite people from a chamber of commerce at no charge for a year, correct?
That is correct, because that is part of the nonprofit limited time offer that we have, which is you can, as long as they are a registered 501c3 or C6, they can be a part of the BNI. It's only one, it's limited to one person, the first person that you approve.
Now, this may be limited to core regions, is that correct?
Sorry, non-core regions. That
Yeah.
is correct. It's
But
limited to core regions.
this is pretty much all core. Yeah.
However, and people don't know that most chambers are registered as a 501c3 or C6. Like, they don't know that. And so that is, but they're fantastic, right? Because they have so many other members, but they also want everyone to join. So it's a nice balance. It's not a competition.
Right.
So we have a lot of chambers in BNI. Yeah.
Right. Oh, there's one, Becky Phipps, at the Greater Omaha Chamber, and she became a member in October. So there you go.
Nice.
Excellent.
Nebraska.
She says, I'm happily connecting and referring like crazy. Chamber people are amazing. They know everybody, right?
They know everybody.
So definitely, if you can, and I know there are some chambers that have their own referral passing thing that goes on, and that might be a conflict of interest, but if it isn't, then this is a huge, huge opportunity for you to reach out to your chamber and invite them in and just have them see what happens. And I think you could really have that really nice open door between both organizations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think and some people are excited. Some people are like, hey, we've heard of this opportunity. We think it would be a really nice fit. And we know that BNI, because BNI does have credibility, right? It has name recognition as well. So it can get them out and connected with other folks in neighboring cities and towns.
Right.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. I think there was another question up here somewhere, wasn't there? Yeah, Celestine says, ask the visitor if they are not interested, do they know of someone who would be interested? So kind of keep that talk going. And sometimes the interested party who wasn't interested suddenly becomes interested, right?
That's a great strategy.
Yeah.
Because if they really are, because once they realize that you're actually really interested in finding a CPA for your chapter, and they're like, oh, they're going to keep going.
Yeah.
And especially if they've done business with you, if they've received referrals from you before, they can see the future that they may potentially not get that business if you're looking for an exclusive CPA to pass business to. Look, I'm trying to find someone that I send the bulk of my business to be a part of my referral networking group. If you position it that way, people might get nervous. Sometimes they legitimately are super busy, right? Right now, CPAs, a lot of them are busy, and yet we are filling up chapters with them right now. So again, that's another one of those, like, I'm going to make an assumption that they're going to be busy until about mid-April or the beginning of May.
Right.
And not always the case, right? Because they can see, if they know that they want to have their business not be so cyclical and have consistent business throughout the year, then they would see the value of BNI, right? So yeah. So I mean, I think it's but you can ask. A lot of times people are truly just bogged down, right? They're a one-person operation or 1 or 2 person operation. They don't have the bandwidth. They have a wait list. They truly cannot take any more referrals, which is a great problem to have. So then you can ask them, who do they pass their overflow to? Is there someone else that you pass business to when you are tied up? And then they may actually give you a genuine connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know I had, when I was early into BNI, I met a digital printer. We were an offset printer back in the days when I was working for a printing company. And I thought, oh, I don't want this guy around here because he's going to take all my business, because that is the initial, fear that people have, which is kind of ridiculous because you're in this group where everyone knows you, right? But what it turned out to be was the most amazing relationship. I actually introduced him to my boss at the time, and like, we didn't do any digital stuff and he was doing all that stuff, and we were passing business back and forth to each other. And it was something where I know that there are a lot of times people say, well, I want to invite this person. We have someone who does something kind of like that, but not exactly. And then we again say, oh, I'm just not going to invite them.
Yeah. So that's you have to be careful, right? Because you don't want to make someone upset in the group if they are definitely covering that seat. So if there's someone says, I do disability, and you have a life insurance person, and you haven't decided to split those 2 seats up, you have to, obviously, the best thing would be for you to actually talk to the person who occupies that seat, right? Or somebody on membership. But to be fair, you don't want to just show up with someone if you're not sure. It's usually best to have that conversation with them.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's also doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense to, if someone is a classification cowboy, which is a great podcast that everyone should listen to. If you are a classification cowboy in which you're trying to cover several seats and you're not supposed to, that's also, you have to be careful. I don't know the number of the podcast, Chris. I'm so sorry.
It's one of, I think if you just go to bnipodcast.com, you'll be able to hit the search and just do like classification cowboy.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But that one, when people are kind of, and again, you're limiting. So sometimes, like you said, to your point, I mean, there's chapters that have multiple realtors, right? A buyer's agent, you know, and a selling agent, like the one who lists, or they have a, you know, obviously commercial and residential, but there's times, or maybe different areas, right? Like this person does the north half of the state. This person does the south half. This person does the state that's neighboring. So I think it's important to not get so bogged down, because you're adding a connection. Every time someone comes, they come with a minimum of 150, 200, 250 connections that they are close to that could potentially help your business.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
All right. Jody says, I took a friend to my chapter to introduce her as she was looking for work. Half my chapter told me I should be hiring her. And I guess she did, and she's been with her for 2 years. So there you go.
Nice.
So yeah, I think that's another thing to look at. I think when you're inviting, are like, how is your business growing? And are you going to get to the point where you need to add employees? Why not? You know, invite people in your own field to check out the meeting, right? They may wind up your employee and maybe in another chapter at some point representing it.
Oh, absolutely. Because they get a sense of what BNI is. It's like, you don't have to sell them on anything. They're actually seeing what it is. And then they can, get excited and expand again your reach for your company.
So, okay, wow, we have someone who is volunteering to put in all of our links here. Is it Gail? Is that pronounced right? But thank you for that, for following up so well. That's great.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I love it.
Excellent. Okay, so wow, it's already 12:41. That was fast.
That was fast.
Claudia, any final words of advice before people just start putting any questions? You can put it right in the chat today, since it's all kind of organized. But you know, what's like the one thing people should take away from this?
I think it's important to just, again, really focus on the connections, right? Again, not limiting, really focusing on a great way of Givers Gain is helping to expand everyone's network. And so if you look at it from that perspective, you can then reach out to people and feel comfortable about bringing them to your group. Now, they are going to be asked if they're interested in applying, and you want to give them the heads up, right? But at the same time, at the very least, you're going to make connections with some amazing people. And some people might even be, you know, you never know, you might build a relationship, a business relationship with some of these folks. So I can't stress that enough. I've said that throughout this time, but I think that is important to remember, is that you're adding connections and expanding everyone's network and visibility when you bring visitors.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris says, I'm an insurance broker that specializes in the contractor and trades industry. Who was that asked about trades earlier? I always invite my book of business into our chapter. The contractors who do join refer so much business between each other, talk about writing insurance and helping a client increase their revenue. So yeah, I think that, you know, for those who are saying it is really difficult to bring trades in, that's one way to do it. And, you know, inviting them, like maybe having a special day for trades people only to come in, because I know it can be tough if you've got a mostly, say, white collar group and, you know, you invite a plumber or an electrician, they're like, I don't know if this is the right fit for me. They may not feel like they're part of something that could work for them. But if you bring in other people at the same time and then put them, if you're online, in a breakout room, or have them meet after the meeting and let them talk to each other and see what the possibilities are, then you've got a great chance to have them fill out those applications.
Absolutely. So, so Mark just said stack day. A stack day is a specific seat, right? So if you're looking for a general contractor, you're bringing in all general contractors in that day, right? But, or maybe one or two specific seats. But a contact sphere day is when you can bring all trades, which is to your point. And again, even when you have these, any visitor can come at any time, right? It gets your chapter inviting. It gets you in the habit of inviting. So on the way to inviting a painter, you may stumble upon a graphic designer, right? Totally fine to come that day. But usually the chapters, and if you set it up as well, if you do have some trades folks in your group, it's also great if you can if your secretary of treasurer can put them on the schedule to speak that day. So now they're having a conversation, even if you have the realtor, right? Because the realtor is going to be sending a bunch of stuff as well to the trades folks. So if you have them there, they can start to kind of visualize, and everything can sort of be focused around, who are we looking for? The membership committee report, like, who are we looking for? We're looking for an electrician, a painter, a handy person, right? Like all of those things. And so, and then the feature presentations, so that the meeting is customized for them. Another thing, and this is good, right? Because 2 years ago, we couldn't talk about this, but we have different meeting formats, right? We have these other two options of virtual, which is every meeting online every week. And we have hybrid, which is the first meeting of the month in person and the rest virtual. And you would think a lot of times tradespeople, again, there's this misconception that the trades folks are not good with technology. Some are not, right? All of these other things, but some of them love these options because they can get to go to the job site early and then zoom in before the meeting, before their day gets started. Because that was a lot of the problem. So think about it from the perspective, if some of you have been sort of grappling with, I don't want to do Zoom, it's fine. But a big benefit that we've seen is a lot of tradespeople like it. They can be in their van or right at the site right before they get started, and do that as well. So hybrid is a nice balance of that.
Great. All right. Oh, Barry is asking, when a prospect begins to turn me down, he says, I take it away from them by asking who their best competitor is, because we need someone good to give our referrals to. I love that phrasing, because people are like, well, I don't know if I'm going to get referrals, but if you're trying to fill a seat and people are saying, yeah, I would love to give, our chapter often has referrals to give to people in your profession.
Yeah. I mean, that's of course, right? That's why it's good to, for those of you that do not utilize your BNI Connect, make sure you're registering your visitors in advance so everyone can sort of tailor, your president or your vice president that's putting together the slides every week, right? They can say, look, we are actually looking for this, right? Membership committee can say, we are looking for your seat. And people can sort of speak it even in their weekly presentations. So that all, again, is tailored. If the more you have advanced notice, it's better. So for those of you that are actually inviting the people, let everyone know and give them that heads up, so that you can set them up and they can feel like, wow, this meeting was really customized for me. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Dawn says, I like to say we are currently interviewing for your seat. So it kind of makes it feel like, oh, this is something you have to really, really want it, because it's not something that we're just going to let you in.
Yeah, and the right people, like, again, sometimes there's desperation and scarcity, which that's never a good thing, right? We don't want to be in the realm of scarcity, because then it's like we're begging people to be a part of this, right? And that's never just a good idea. If you say, we are currently interviewing for your profession, that brings a level of gravitas. It's a certain exclusivity that shows that BNI, we're not just taking warm bodies, we're actually picking people that are the best for this group, because I'm going to be referring my grandmother and I'm going to be referring my top client. I can't have you mess this up. So you're going to have to do what you need to do to get the seat. And so if you saying that, the right people, like, I like that, right? They're going to be drawn to that, rather than just having someone come in. It's always the marriage analogy that I say, which is, it's really easy to get married, I know. And it's not as easy to get a divorce, which I also know. So you bring someone into the group, but then you're stuck with them for that year or 2 years that they've signed up. So you want to make sure that you're picking the right person. And that adds, again, you're going to get the right people and your chapter will go in the right direction.
Right. A few people are talking about what should we be wearing to our chapter.
Wearing?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. We like to say, I'm pretty much, I'm not super traditional in all aspects, but I do think that dressing for your profession,
Mhm.
what does that mean, right? So if you're a painter, you don't have to wear a tuxedo. I'm obviously being ridiculous,
Right.
but you don't have to wear a suit and a shirt and tie, right? And a suit. However, even if you are, a lot of times a shirt like yours, like a button down, no
Mhm.
tie, a polo shirt, like a golf shirt, like anything like that is neat. Even if you're business casual and, but sometimes somebody comes on and I'm like, yeah, there goes that business attorney I told you about. And you're in a hoodie and your hat and you're like, the lights are low and you have mess in the background. So I think you should present yourself, especially on a Zoom, you present yourself, neat and professional, right? This is a professional meeting. This is not, we're having coffee at Starbucks, which I don't drink coffee anyway, so I wouldn't do that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a social club. This is a professional meeting. And so you should show up as such, right? So I think
Yeah.
as long as you become neat and presentable, but in that case, but you don't even have to wear a tie, but I think that you do have to be neat and professional.
Yeah, I think someone used to say, what if you were to meet your best customer at BNI? Would you be happy with what you're wearing to that meeting at that time? Maybe
Hmm.
yes, maybe no. And so I think that's a good way to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. It is 12:50. I think we have one question left. Is
Okay.
BNI Team USA and BNI TV on YouTube different? Yes. So BNI TV is our main BNI YouTube channel, and our BNI Team USA is strictly for US members, either core or franchise regions. So this is where you'll see a lot of these webinars and Claudia's webinars. By the way, Claudia does do a monthly webinar on the second Wednesday of the month. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, yes. So this past one was fantastic. It is up on the BNI USA YouTube page.
Yeah.
It was for, so it's the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, DEI, BNI Talks, BNI DEI Talks, and they're the second Wednesday of every month at 3 p.m. Eastern. And we did Black History Month and International Networking Week. So we had a fantastic conversation with Black leaders from across the world on that conversation. And we just asked questions about, their time in BNI, the ways that you can recruit people of color and different things like that, right? Their background and how you can engage Black people in business and things like that. So the next month, of course, is March. So it's Women's History Month. So we have another panel of amazing leaders from across this organization and members as well. So it's going to be a mixed panel coming in. I don't know if we have the link, but you can usually find them. Yep, I knew Steve was going to drop it, but you can find those every month, and those are CEUs as well. But they're a good opportunity if you're looking for ways to diversify. But of course, we have Pride in April. We have one on being on the spectrum and working with people in business on the spectrum. So that will be fantastic for Autism Awareness Month. So we have different topics that we talk about. So definitely come join us and let people know as well.
All right. So why don't we end on that note? It is 12:52 already. So what a great discussion, Claudia. I knew you were going to bring it today, and I think it worked out really well. I think a lot of people got some good ideas, especially what they're saying in the chat. So thanks for being on today, and we'll see you next month for Women's History Month as well.
My pleasure. Yes, absolutely.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for being on today. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Claudia at claudiathompson@bni.com or me, Steve Tenuzzo at bni.com. And give yourselves one CEU. And we'll see you next time. Okay, take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.